Hello, friends and families and DPS community. My name is Javier Ibarra, host of the EDUCA podcast in English. Our guest today is Tiffany Askins, Financial Literacy Specialist, Program Coordinator for Denver Public Schools. Our topic is the importance of financial literacy, a graduation requirement starting for the class of 2027. So to kick us off, Tiffany, welcome to EDUCA. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking.
Can you share with us and our listeners, how long have you worked for Team DPS, and what is one fun fact about you?
So I have been very fortunate to work with DPS for over 15 years.
Wow.
And so one fun fact about me, that I was originally going to be named Golda Meir, which was after the Prime Minister of Israel. She was the first Prime Minister of Israel. And so that was what my mom was going to name me and call me Goldie for short.
Okay.
And so I love to share that just because, she was such an influential woman in her country, and my mom thought enough to be able to possibly name me after her.
So now I have to ask, how did we get to Tiffany?
So breakfast at Tiffany's.
I thought.
Audrey Hepburn. She's an avid reader, movie watcher of old classics, and so breakfast at Tiffany's, and then obviously after Tiffany's, the jeweler. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that wonderful intro. I want to share with our listeners a little bit about the topic. The DPS vision and Superintendent Dr. Alex Marrero's greatest goal is that every student thrives. That said, let's dive into our topic. In 2021, a committed group of DPS alumni acknowledged the essential role of practical life skills as it relates to financial literacy. The alumni not only wanted to ensure that graduates excel academically, but also embark on the post-graduation journeys well equipped to thrive in the real world. As a result of the advocacy, the DPS school board approved financial literacy as a graduation requirement beginning with the class of 2027. So this leads me to my first question, which is, with the implementation of the financial literacy as a graduation requirement, which classes are offered for students to meet this requirement?
Yeah. So students can take one of two classes. They can either take financial algebra or they can take personal finance.
Financial algebra, that sounds as intense as I assume it is.
It's not quite as intense as we have made it to historically be, right? And so inside of financial algebra, just like personal finance, they're working on personal financial concepts. So both classes have those concepts in them, whereas financial algebra is going to have a deeper level of some mathematics, but it's going to be more of our applied mathematics compared to that pure mathematics of all the things that might scare students away from math. This is the math for life that students are going to need to know, and really understanding the nuances behind how math helps us understand the financial decisions that we need to make in life.
And I'm glad you clarified that, because what I had said is a common misconception, right?
Yeah.
That, it sounds intense, so it must be intense. But the truth of it is, it's not that it's easy, but it's very useful.
Exactly.
Right? And so I feel like when something is useful, you learn it, you get good at it, and you continue to use it. My next question for you is, in the course that we were just talking about, what personal finance topics will students be introduced to? I mean, there's a wide array. What can they look forward to?
Yeah, this is a really comprehensive course, and there's a lot of information that students will receive in this particular course. And I would have to be really jealous for a lot of the students, because it's something that I wish that I had as a high school student, and even now as an adult, right? As I'm adulting in life. But the topics that students can expect to learn about would be like navigating their taxes, understanding about savings and investing, money management, career planning, and pathways after high school, because our young adults have different options that they can embark upon as they take the next steps in their lives. And then also money mindset. How are we understanding how our money helps us shape the decisions that we make about finances, and how do those habits maybe benefit us, and how do maybe some of those mindsets maybe make a negative influence on us. So
I'm glad you talked about that because while I was growing up, some of the best financial advice that I received at the time was scared money doesn't make money. And as you can imagine, that's not good advice. So I'm really happy that we get to offer this to our students to set them up for success in their life, right?
Yeah.
Now, can you tell me, can we discuss the potential impact of high school financial literacy education on a student's career choices, right? If they understand more financial literacy, how does that impact their future choices in career or if they decide to go to college or do a trade?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things with financial literacy is talking about giving access to information and making students feel empowered about the choices that they are making.
Yes.
And so when students are understanding this is the life that I want to potentially have and what is the career that I need to have in order to make that life come to fruition. So it's really backwardsing out of where do I see myself at specific stages in life? And based on those stages in life and thinking about the career, what is the career I want to do? So I like to give an example, like right now, many young adults, as I've observed classes, talked with teachers and students, they are going through this process as we speak. And so students were saying, oh, I want to live in this type of house. I want to live in this type of city. I want to have these types of things. And then they start to look at the career that they want to do. And based on that career and the income that that career provides, they're saying, oh, wait a minute, that's actually possibly not going to be the best career choice, or I might have to get some additional education. I might have to maybe do an apprenticeship, or I might have to go get some more certifications. And so students are starting to make decisions based on the lifestyle that they want to have. That career choice is then adjusting, or even where they want to live. So they're shifting. A lot of young adults are shifting right now.
That is so important. And I think back to when I was a student at DPS, how having that financial literacy would have shaped my future decisions, right? When I was growing up, I thought the biggest or the coolest career that I could get is construction foreman, right? Because they told me to dream big, and I thought, okay, well, construction worker, what's higher than that, right? And I thought foreman. But now that I see that, okay, you can cross-reference, thanks to the internet, what the salary is for that position and see if that's going to relate to the lifestyle that you want to live. I assume that in these classes, we're also teaching them a little bit about inflation because the salary you make today might not be the salary that you need, you know, across many years of inflation. And so hot topic for today, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And students being able to take all that information and make the decision that's best for themselves.
My next question, we talked a little bit about this, but how can financial literacy influence teenagers' beliefs toward building a foundation for a long-term financial security, right? We talked about what they want, maybe necessarily in the short term, but, you know, are they thinking about retirement? You know, they're assuming 15, 16, 17-year-olds, why would they have any need to think about retirement, right?
Absolutely. It's called the power of time.
Oh, okay. There's a term for it.
That's what I call it.
Okay.
I call it the power of
Now
time.
I'm going to steal that.
Yeah, please do. Please borrow that. Absolutely. And it's really about awareness. And the more awareness that we give young adults is the ability for them to be able to make decisions on what time looks like. And so, as we know, when we're budgeting, when we're saving, when we're investing, especially when we're investing, in order for us to have that long-term financial security, we need to have time on our side. And time comes when they're younger.
Yes.
And so there's a very big difference between a 17-year-old starting to make that investment compared to a 25-year-old making that investment. That elapse of those years makes a big difference. Or even a 30-year-old, when people start saying, oh, I really want to think about this. And so this class brings in that awareness of, if I'm wanting to live that rich life, that wealthy life, that secure life, whatever that looks like for young adults, it is bringing an awareness and it is bringing time so that they can have that long-term financial well-being and security.
We might get into this a little bit later, but right now, as students are navigating life after high school, they will experience various life events, right? And I think about my own life, right? School, marriage, kids at some point, right? Everything. How can this course, this one class or two, serve as the groundwork or cornerstone for providing them with the knowledge and skills to make informed decisions?
So we all come to personal finance with knowledge. Sometimes that, and we come with some type of foundation in place. Sometimes that foundation can have certain holes in it. Sometimes that foundation can have certain cracks in it, or sometimes we're starting to build that foundation, right? And so what this course allows students to do is it allows them to fill in as needed. It allows them to go deeper into places where they want to go deeper at. And then also as they're making decisions in life. So high school students make a very different decision than say somebody who is now removed from high school by a few years when they start getting, I like to call it your big girl, big boy job, right? So when those jobs come into play, you're now looking at a benefits package. I don't know about you, but when I first got my big girl job right out of college, I was given a package. I didn't know, one, that I could negotiate that package. I didn't know, two, that that package had health benefits with it, that I needed to look at all the different health options. And so having a foundation of now I understand that I can negotiate, that my high school jobs that I've had gives me the experience to be able to negotiate a higher salary in something additional, or when I do get a job and I have this health benefit package, that I now know how to read what is in this health benefit package so that I can make the best decision for myself or for my family. When I do start having kids, I can then start saying, okay, now I know how to change that. Or I also know a little bit about investing, and I can say, well, that $100 that I invest now as a 20-year-old is going to give me the power of time, and that maybe I'm making more money than I've ever made, so that $100 may not be as intense on my budget now, so I can put that to the side. So they start to lay that groundwork now so that when different events happen in life, they are actually understanding how to potentially make those decisions that are going to be right for them, and where to even get the information.
When I was in college, so my degree is in business management and concentration in entrepreneurship. And so one of the courses that I took, we talked about what happens if you win the lottery. Should you take the large lump sum, or should you take the annual annuities? And like you said, everyone had a certain financial foundation. And it depends, really, it's situational, right? That was the one thing I learned in business school, is everything is situational. You can go into a meeting and say, well, it's situational, right? But we learned that the time value of money, right? That term, time value of money. $100 is worth more today than it is tomorrow. So if you took the annuities, you'd actually have less money. Now, after many years of really thinking about that class and that course, I think most folks who don't have financial literacy as a foundation should take the annuities, because the statistic is most people go broke that win the lottery. Why is that? Because they don't have the financial literacy. So I'm not saying our students are going to win the lottery, but I'm saying if they do, I'm hoping that through this class they know how to stay wealthy through that and how to be prepared for these financial decisions.
Absolutely. And those money mindsets, right?
Money mindset
is really understanding, based on this situation that I have been presented with, what do I value about money? What does that look like? And what is my mindset saying about money, so that I can make sure that I have that long-term success? So it's really understanding, like, how am I going to utilize what I know about myself, what I've been taught from family, friends, environment.
The world, right? Now it's TikTok and Instagram.
Exactly. That's who we are competing with, or that's also another platform of education that students are doing. And so how can I be a critical consumer of information to make the best decision for myself?
I love that for our students. I think they're really going to be supported in this education of theirs for future years to come, right? I want to get to a little bit about your experience, right? Because you're obviously a professional, right? We have you on the show. You are the person to talk to. So in your experience, how does early exposure to financial literacy empower children, students, if you will, to set and achieve financial goals, right? We talked about having the knowledge, but now we're talking more about the financial goals, both for their short and long-term future selves.
Early exposure is really impactful because when we expose young adults to any information early, then we're giving them time to practice.
Right. Time to make mistakes.
Exactly.
Yes.
And learn, right? We give them opportunity to make that mistake, to say, what did you learn from that mistake? So that reflection process, right? And then how are you going to pivot based on that? And so when we expose kids to financial literacy at very young ages in life, what we're doing is that we're giving them the power of time to be able to set realistic goals for themselves in the short term and in the long term. Just recently, obviously, Christmas is upon us, or the holidays are upon us, and I was in the store in Target.
Okay. Great
And
story.
yeah, great store. It gets a lot of my money many
Okay.
times. And so I was in the store, and a dad was in there with his two young daughters. They were elementary school age, and one of the little girls had said, "I want this." And I'm not sure what the item was that she wanted. And so instead of the dad saying, "We don't have the money," he said, "Is that in your budget?"
Wow. What a question.
And so she paused. And so I'm kind of looking at this from a distance, right? And she paused and she said, "No." So then her older sister said, "So if you want that, then what are you going to have to do in order to get that happen?" Now, this is me paraphrasing. They said it in
Right.
elementary terms. And
Right.
so that moment of teaching them that it's not that you can't have it, it's that how did you budget for it, and how are you going to budget for it? How are you going to shift your budget, your allowance that we're giving you so that you can have that? So the introduction of that in elementary school is telling young adults, one, what do I really value this item that much that I'm going to shift my budget to make this purchase happen? And then number two, how is that going to impact some of the other long-term decisions that I need to make financially? And so introducing it young and often gives students the opportunity, gives young adults the opportunity to practice it and to be able, so when they get to be teenagers, they have that with them, along with when they become young adults, they have it as well. So they've had time to practice instead of starting that practicing when they're 17 or when
Right.
they get that first paycheck,
Right.
right? You know.
So maybe we'll get into this, and stop me if we do, but what are the ages of the students that will be taking these courses?
So currently, right now, we are implementing it at the high school level.
Okay.
So it's our juniors and seniors that
Okay.
will be exposed to this.
Sure.
There's going to be an eventual rollout where we will have this in the middle schools, and then we will have this in elementary. So we are going, so it is, we're looking at financial aid, and that's a wonderful thing that DPS has done, is that we're looking at a K through 12.
A full spectrum for folks.
A full spectrum. And so it may not be taught at each. We're thinking about where in our learning does this make sense? How can we introduce this in maybe in what we're currently already teaching, along with where does it make sense for our students to have an opportunity to go a little bit deeper developmentally.
So the students who are graduating in the class of 2027, so that would be incoming freshmen next year.
This year.
This year.
This year.
This year. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And so right now we are piloting and implementing at the same time, right? So schools felt that this was such an important thing for their young adults that are not current, that are current students, or sophomores or juniors and seniors, for them to receive this type of learning. So they have implemented this course, even though it is not a required course for students until this year's freshmen become juniors in the 25-26 school year.
I'm curious, and from a family standpoint, this next question is a two-parter, right? So first part is, how does a student's understanding of financial literacy influence their family's financial habits and decisions? And is this going to have a positive effect throughout their decision making, right? Because I keep thinking about the example that you just gave us, and in my mind I'm like jumping up in joy and clapping, right? Because that is something that our our children, if you teach them that when they're
Mm-hmm.
young, think of the power moves they'll be able to make
Mm-hmm.
when they're older. And I think from an equity standpoint,
Absolutely.
for our students,
Mm-hmm.
that is just amazing.
Yeah, you know, I'll start with the equity standpoint, then I'll get into the family perspective is
Yes.
from equity. It gives financial literacy is a right that we need to have access for all, regardless of how families come to us. And so that is our BIPOC community, that is also our students that are coming as undocumented residents in our country.
Sure.
It is a right for all people to have.
Right.
And what I like to tell people is that there is enough for everybody. And so that scarcity mindset that many people that live on the margins experience is something that as we start to learn about financial awareness and get access to information that I was never given as a woman of color until I got much older in life, or I was around certain groups of people that had the information, is when I started to get more information. But now we're giving it to all individuals. And so what that does is that does remove the barriers and remove the obstacles, so that we are starting to see communities that have been marginalized start to gain generational wealth, as opposed to always starting at zero. There's a very unfortunate statistic by 2050, 2050, that Black communities will have a negative net worth. And then right after that, our Latin communities will be at a $17,000 net worth by 2050. So that is our current juniors and seniors who will be 34, 35 years old. So if we can start instilling this now, think about the possibilities of changing that for marginalized and communities of color. What impact does that have on families? When kids get information and they're excited about the information that they give, what's the first thing they do?
Tell the parents.
They go tell.
Yeah.
And then parents get excited, right? And as parents get excited, then they're starting to learn, because they're learning alongside of their kids, and then their kids, and it becomes a support system, right? You tell your friends, you tell your families, and then we start to normalize the conversation of money, which hasn't always been normalized in communities of color, right? And so now we start to normalize that, and we start to be the support system for one another in our circle of influence, along with being able to hold each other accountable. So like that young girl did, her sister did for her, she was like, do you have that in your budget, and what are you willing to change in order to make that happen? It's when I go make that purchase, I want it, but does it fit in my budget? I'm not saying I can't have it. You can't have it, Mom. But Mom, you told me you were trying to get out of debt. You told me you wanted to start investing more. How does this impact those decisions that you're going to make? Or you said, okay, you said, daughter, you wanted to live your best life, or you're saving for that car. So is that in your budget? So we hold each other accountable, but then we also get an opportunity to support one another in a way that we probably have never been able to do before in our communities, especially in our communities like DPS, right?
Based on the answers that you just gave me, I have 100 other clarifying questions, but I'm gonna keep it, for the interest of time, I'm gonna keep it going. But if there's time at the end, I really want to ask these. We talked a lot about the benefits of the having this financial literacy as a foundation, right? But what advice would you have wanted to receive when you were in school, wanting to learn about money? Are you a DPS alum? Did you go to school here?
I am not a
That's
DPS
okay.
alum.
That's okay.
My kids are.
Yeah, there you
And
go.
so is my husband.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
So, DPS students, right?
Yeah.
What would you have wished yourself or your students? What's the advice that you would wanted to hear?
For me, it would have been the importance of time. The
Some more scarce resources that
absolutely,
we have.
right?
Yeah.
And it is what financial decisions, what am I doing? It's not even, I don't even know that somebody could have said financial decisions to me at 17 years old, graduating high school. They would have said, you know, how are you using your money? And how is your money going to work for you when you get to be X age? I wish that somebody would have said, what do you want your life to look like at 30, at 40,
Right,
at
to
50?
give you a perspective.
Right, and then say, based on that life, what are you going to do to backwards out that and make that life happen? And what are you going to do with your time along the way to make sure you are making the best decisions that you can make for that? And also still have fun, live life, because that's what money is meant to have. We're supposed to give, save, enjoy all of those things, do the things, but also be mindful of how you're doing those, because is that impacting your later life? And so that would have been really important for me, obviously making it in a conversation that a 17-year-old can handle. And I say that now being my age, and that's something that I talk to my kids about, my husband and I talk to our kids about. And what I see from them is that they're making different financial choices that we were not making at their age, which that generational legacy, right, that's what's making wonderful. So it's just the power of time.
I can't help but think about our sophomores, let's start freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors, right, our high school students, how we want to talk to them about financial literacy, but in their mind, that's like the furthest from what's going on, right? They're not thinking, or maybe they are, but I know I wasn't. Let's speak for myself, right? I know I wasn't thinking about 10 years down the line, how, I was going to pay for college or a house or down payment on a car. I wasn't thinking like that. And so my follow-up question to your answer here is, how are we doing that in these classes? How are they designed to do that?
Yeah, so a lot of it is starting with what students want to know. So teachers are being really, from what I have seen, what I have heard, is being really mindful and thoughtful about what are we wanting to know. So I just talked with a teacher the other day, and they were working on talking about credit. And students really, and he knew he needed to move ahead in the lessons, but they really wanted to know about how you get credit and like the credit score. Like they wanted to know the nuances of the credit score. And while the curriculum talks about that and the content talks about that, he went even further and he spent more time on credit because that was what the students were interested in. Another teacher talked about students really got into the banking, like financial institutions. That could be kind of boring, depending, it's checking, savings, online banking. And we have a lot of young adults that are choosing to not do banking. It's called unbanked. And so
what are they doing? This is new to me. What are they doing if you don't have a bank?
They're doing PayPal, Square Cash, those other types of things that are exactly right. So in that conversation, kids got really interested in banking. And so then it went into careers in banking. So teachers are taking students' interest and going deeper, then also assessing, so like that funds of knowledge, and also saying, okay, well, they know a lot about that. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. We're going to touch points on that. Kids want to know about investing. They really want to know because they see people talk about it in TikTok and Snapchat and social media platforms, crypto, right, all of those things. And so teachers are taking those interests and going deeper into those based on what students want, which is their life event. This is what's interesting to them right now, buying that dream car. What does that look like to buy that dream car?
Yes, dream car was number one for me.
Right? That's what many kids, that's what they see, what they want. And so that's how they are approaching the content. In addition to all of the other things that they need to teach, they're also taking a moment to pause and go a little bit deeper so that kids are getting what they're interested in, so that they're thriving in the moment in which they have created for themselves.
Is this class available for adults?
It needs to be, right? It definitely needs to be. I mean, I really am very passionate about the work. And I believe that it doesn't stop in high school. It needs to also be at a different stage in life, whether that's at the college level or workforce. I believe companies need to offer some type of financial literacy course that students, that employees can take. I think it needs to be done again when you start embarking on your 30s, because life looks a little bit different then.
And also I think of technology, right? Because by the time our high school students hit 30, the technology has probably been advanced. It might be something different, right? I think back to the PayPals, the Venmos. I used to think, and not that I wasn't aware of this, but I always thought, wow, that's cool that you can have your money here. It's kind of like a bank. Then someone much wiser than me told me, well, they're not insured. So if something happens to that, there goes your money.
Exactly.
But banks are insured. And so that's a great benefit to have your money in a bank versus to have it in Venmo or PayPal or whatever.
Yeah, and banks are getting wise because you're going into online banking.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of banks that are not brick and mortar, right? They don't have a building to go to, and kids navigate this way, and they navigate very well that way.
Yeah.
And so it really and truly is important for them to know all of these different things in the world of technology, because there's a lot of misinformation, which is why we want them to be critical consumers.
That's the thing here with the introduction of TikTok and a little more old school Instagram, right? You were hearing a lot of from financial gurus, right? Like the crypto thing. Myself being a business major, I knew that was going to fail long before it did, because there's nothing backing it up, right? And so now crypto is a huge fiasco, right? You used to be able to buy pizza with it, and then you could buy a mansion with it. Now I think you're back to buying pizza with it.
Exactly, yeah, like the .com industry, right?
Yeah, but I wish that I know people that lost a lot of money doing that, and I'm so excited for our students to have a teacher have that resource to say, hey, I saw on TikTok, if I put all my money into crypto, 10 years from now, I will be a gazillionaire. And to have the teacher say, well, let's back that up. Let's see why they say that, right? Are they looking for likes? Are they looking for followers, right? Do they get paid for that? Because that's the beginning of misinformation. Tiffany, I want to thank you for joining us here today. Before we go, is there anything else that you want to mention about financial literacy here at DPS? Anything at all?
First of all, thank you so much for the invite. I really do appreciate that. I just, would say that we just get behind supporting what financial literacy looks like, not only inside of our district, but even for ourselves. And so in order for us to support our students, we also have to become more financially literate, and also being vulnerable as we feel comfortable to talk about the money, because students are asking and they want to have those conversations with adults, and they look to us in some capacity to see. And so we have to be very mindful and very accurate and very truthful about what we're experiencing in life, so that I have somebody tell me once that, I paid the tuition so you don't have to. And so that is one of the things that, we've gone through, and we've paid some of that tuition. Not saying that it is going to be their life, but to say listen to some of that wisdom, but also we have to be vulnerable in that, so that students can start to understand how to unpack that, so we can just really change the world and make a better place for all people and for all of our students. So, yeah.
Tiffany, thank you
Absolutely.
so much for joining us.
Yeah.
Everyone watching and listening, this concludes our EDUCA DPS podcast for today. I want to ask that you please help us share this content with families, with friends, and other community members. For more EDUCA content and other stories, visit and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Denver Public Schools Plus. And you can also find us in the most popular podcast platforms such as Spotify, Apple, Buzzsprout, and more. It is important to give credit to the people behind the scenes who contribute to the making of this and all DPS media productions, starting off with our Chief of Communications, Bill Good, our Executive Director, Will Jones, our Director of External Communications, Scott Pribble, Selena Nakamura, Director of Internal Communications, Don Pierce, our Executive Producer and Videographer, Beto Gaitan, our Multimedia Lead Producer and host of the Spanish EDUCA podcast, Hannah Young, in charge of our social media, Georgia Alexander, our Bond and Mill Levy Communication Specialist, April Spites, our graphic designer of this show and more, to Katie Hamilton, Strategic Communication Specialist. A special shout out to our DPS educators, students, and parents. A big thank you to Dr. Alex Marrero, proud superintendent of Denver Public Schools, for supporting EDUCA and all other platforms. Yours truly, Javier Ibarra, Senior Manager of Media and Public Relations, as well as the EDUCA host in English. Please remember to tell your children more often, and Tiffany, if you can say this with me, I believe in you and I know you can do it. Until next time.